So I wanted to take a moment to discuss the Stoic perspective on happiness. So the Stoic perspective on happiness says that happiness results from virtue and virtue only. Not only that, but they also say that virtue is the only good. So virtue is the only good, and then happiness is reliant solely on virtue. The Aristotelian sense of this is similar, but at the same time has its differences. The Aristotelian sense of virtue and ethics is that virtue is the most important good. Happiness relies on virtue, but there are other goods out there as well. The Aristotelian sense, or the philosophical sense of Aristotle, notes that in addition to virtue as the most important good, there's also other goods such as family and also familial well-being, that is, and prosperity and other matters as well. So the Stoics take what could be considered an extreme point of view, and it was a controversial point of view in the sense that they say that virtue is indeed the only good, and happiness relies solely on one thing, that is virtue. Well, the question becomes, why do the Stoics take that perspective? I think the answer here rests in the fact that the Stoics sought to build a human being that is resilient to all circumstances, irrespective of externals, which they would call as matters that ought to be indifferent to the human being. And thus, by saying that virtue is the only good, taking the Stoic perspective, one remains resilient in the face of any externals that they may face. Now, there are other philosophers that also emphasize virtue as the most important good, namely Plato and Socrates. So Socrates, in Plato's dialogues, it's clear that he emphasizes good as the only virtue as the most important good, and so did Plato in the Republic. So, with this in mind, it's clear that many ancient Greek philosophers agreed that virtue is the most important good, and the Stoics go further and say that it is the only good, and that it is the good which is the sole prerequisite to happiness. So, the question becomes, what philosophical lens do you take? And I think the Stoic sense is the most superior one, in my opinion. It's not wise to categorize various philosophical lenses as superior and inferior, but I think the Stoic sense leads to indifference to external circumstances. And I think there is virtue in that in itself. So, in addition to that, for the Stoics, virtue is a disposition. It's a continuous thing. To act virtuously and to behave virtuously is a disposition. In addition, for the Stoics, happiness is also a continuous phenomenon. That is, that happiness is not a transient feeling, but a continuous phenomenon. A Stoic, there's no one that is fully a Stoic, but a Stoic is one that would be happy irrespective of what the Stoics would call as externals and indifferences. So for the Stoics, happiness is a term that is used in a much different sense than what we would use it in the modern world. So in the modern world, we say we're happy if we've purchased a new vehicle, or we're happy if someone compliments us. However, in the Stoic sense, unlike the modern sense, happiness is a continuous phenomenon. And thus, for the Stoics, virtue is the only good, and happiness is the only uh, is fulfilled through virtue, and virtue is the sole prerequisite to happiness.